My name is Edward. I think if you're reading this or watching it right now, I'm probably dead. Oh no, this is not a seance. I just left a detailed letter asking you to tell our story with my brother, so that it will inspire a little hope and kindness in your hearts, so that you don't forget that there is love and selflessness in the world. Share the story with your friends, write your opinion in the comments, and it'll make my family really happy. I'll start from the beginning. I have a family: dad, mom, and my brother Rick. The four of us lived in a small, beautiful town in England. Our family is very ordinary. My father works as a manager in a tea production company. My mother is a housewife. My brother and I went to school. I'm a year and a half younger than him, and maybe that's why we were friends. I remember once when my bike was taken away from me on the street. There were ordinary teenagers in the type of hooligans. My brother heard my cries for help for a kilometer probably. It turns out that he, too, was returning home at this time of the evening. When he got there in a couple of minutes, he stood up for me. And even though Rick wasn't a hero, he was a small boy with a heart condition. And he wasn't afraid of those guys. And he pounced as soon as he saw that I was scared. We both got it then. The bike was taken away from me, but then the police found it and returned it to me. This story got stuck in my mind, because then I knew for sure that Rick would do anything for me. Why is he ill? Rick was born with a heart condition, unfortunately. Our parents were very worried. Doctors did not give guarantee that he would live or not, but still survived. And after 1.5 years, I was born. I'm not well either. I have problems with my liver and kidneys. My brother and I need a transplant, but as you know, it's difficult to find donors, and it also costs a lot of money. My parents are strong people. They raised us no matter what. I know that my mother is worried about us more than anyone else, but unfortunately it happened like this. I don't think it's anyone's fault. It just happens. It's life. We tried to be like everyone else. We went to school, hung out with friends, read books, went on weekends, celebrated Christmas and birthdays, but nevertheless, we carried piles of pills in special bags. This has already become a way of life for us. We did not particularly spread out diseases, so as not to cause pity, we tried our best to keep the bar, as they say. And we seemed to be doing pretty well. We had friends, and Ricky even seemed to have a romantic relationship. That year, a cool winter came, and we decided to go to the mountains with friends. The guys just loved skiing and snowboarding, but we just wanted to get some air. I didn't see the argument between Ricky and another guy. I was out of the house at that time. When I came back, I saw Ricky going for a snowboard ride. I tried to talk him out of it. I knew it was a bad idea. The guys didn't know about the disease, but I did. But Ricky was angry. It was a stupid argument and nothing more, but he wasn't listening to me. Rick climbed up on the board and chose a descent that wasn't for beginners. In general, everything turned out badly, of course. He fell, lost his balance, and rolled down. And so that he did not crash into a tree, I ran to him to catch or at least change the path. It was a bad idea. He crashed into me, and we both got hurt, and then went to hospital. It turns out that Ricky hit his chest on my legs, which caused heart complications. My parents didn't tell me the rest, but I went through my brother's card while he was sleeping. Ricky was dying, just like me. We both knew that without the transplant, we were not residents. But now my brother has less time to hope. Our parents were looking for a donor, but there was no options. First, I helped with the search. Then one night, I went to his room. I couldn't sleep, and I saw that he was not breathing. His heart had stopped. I called for help. I screamed. I cried. The doctors kicked me out of the room and told me to call my parents, but there was very little time, and there was no donor. I thought it was time to implement my plan. I wrote my parents a message to come, ran to the ward, took the necessary documents, and went to the doctor. Naturally, he said that he wanted to see my parents so that I could become a donor for my brother. So he decided to take fate into his own hands. There is no heroism or desire to be perpetuated by a good deed. And I repeat, my brother would have done the same for me. I have less chance of survival than he does. As you may have guessed, I signed the documents when I read the card to become my brother's donor. I have bad kidneys and liver, but a healthy heart. When I saw that he wasn't breathing, I knew I couldn't live without him, knowing that I had a chance to save Rick, knowing full well that my parents would not allow me to take this step. I took some pills to help me become a donor. I'll go to sleep and not wake up. It won't hurt, I'm sure. Just now I had time to write all this. Well, Rick will probably tell you what happened next. When I came to my senses, the first thing that I saw was my parents. They were happy and sad at the same time. I immediately felt that something was wrong and asked about my brother. "Where's Ed?" On such a simple question, my mother burst into tears. My father bit his lip, and I suddenly felt some warmth in my chest area. I understood everything without words, and it caused me so much pain. Even though his heart was beating inside of mine, I was still alive. It's hard to describe how I felt at that moment. I was angry at him and myself. I was angry at the circumstances, at life and the doctors. But what happened is happened. One thing I knew for sure was that my brother did it because he believed I wouldn't just waste my life. Since he gave me a second chance, I must live and be happy. This is what I promised myself and my parents. Well, after I was discharged from the hospital, the doctor handed me an envelope right on the day of discharge. There was a letter that I read to you. My brother and I once made a vow to each other that if we managed to survive by whitewashing our illnesses, we would definitely teach other children to look at themselves differently, teach them to love life the way we do. I kept my promise. First of all, after rehabilitation and recovery, I started studying, attended paid courses in law and management, entered medical school, and studied long and hard. I became a volunteer of goodwill and helped children whose lives were already on the edge from birth, like Ed and me. Every day I try to do something useful, and if I succeed, I feel that pleasant warmth in the chest area.
Do you have a little brother or sister? How do you feel about them? Have you ever thought about what would happen if you were left alone without them? My name is Mark. I want to tell you about my sister, or rather, why I hated her. Usually when another child is born in the family, it is groomed and cherished the most. And all because he is small. He is the youngest in the family, and accordingly, he needs more attention than the others. For me, it turned out very differently. When I was born, I wasn't the best. I didn't have any privileges. I didn't get snickered at. I didn't get more toys, and I didn't get more pocket money than my sister. She was more loved than I was. I had the feeling that she was younger than I was, although the age difference is 5 years. My sister's name is Alice. No, she's a good person and sometimes a good sister. Sometimes when she was in a good mood, she would bring me home new toys, ice cream, or even give me money. But there were days when she looked awful and acted like a bitch. She could have thrown me out of the room and slammed the door in my face. I didn't understand why her parents didn't scold her at such times. Why did they punish me for any such outbursts? Was she on a special account? But why and how? I remember once I had a birthday, but my parents said that there was no money for the celebration, and I wanted this event so much. I waited a whole year to ask for a new skate as a gift. And then, such a bummer. Naturally, my mood fell. The next day passed as usual, and in the late afternoon, I noticed that my mother was packing a suitcase somewhere. When I asked where she was going, she said that she and Alice should go to another country, and then promised that they would return soon. What? Another country? But how? Why not me? Why her? Why does she always get the best of everything? So they don't have money for a new skate and cake, but they do have money to go to other countries? Why should I do all this? My heart was filled with hatred for Alice that night. I went to her bedroom, watched her pack her own things, and just silently hated her. I have often wondered why they should have another child if there is no place for it in their heart. This unloved, sometimes superfluous member of the family was me. As long as I can remember, I've been trying to figure out the secret of my sister's difference from me. And can everything be simpler? It's just that she's she and I'm I. This continued for several more years, and things got even worse. My parents almost stopped noticing me over the years. I was in the house like a shadow, and I had already learned not to talk to them much, and not to pay attention to the way they hung around this witch. I went to school, did my own homework, signed up for sports clubs, and made plans to get out of the house as soon as possible. Yes, I made a final decision for myself. They will be better off without me, or rather, they will not even notice my absence. I just needed to find a place to live and some part-time work for minors. I waited for the day when my mom and dad left on some business. They promised to return late at night. I picked up my duffel bag from under the bed and headed for the exit. As I was walking down the hall, Alice noticed me. "Hey Mark, where are you going?" she asked me. I was rude when I said it was none of her business. "What difference does it make? Do you care?" I shouted back. Alice made a surprised face, came up to me and asked why I was angry and rude to her. This question enraged me even more. I realized that the silence accumulated over the past months was about to tear me apart, and I gave in to emotions and I told my favorite parents everything I thought about my family. You ask why I'm angry? Because I don't exist in your fucking family. You live your own life. Parents have recently ceased to be interested in how I'm doing. You sit down to dinner separately, separate from me. When I get home, no one even yells, "Mark, hi, how you doing?" And no one asks me how I'm doing at school. Do any of you know that I'm captain of the high school basketball team? Did you know that I've been going to a music club for a year now and I've learned to play the guitar? Yes, I learned to cook food myself with the help of Google. And all because you are not near me. You then with your father, then with your mother, travel around the world, go to some countries and do not even tell where you rested? And I wasn't even taken once. And then you ask why I'm angry? Maybe because I'm not your family, I shouted. I was yelling so hard that I thought my lungs were going to explode from the strain. I blushed and my eyes were streaming with tears. The resentment I had accumulated over the years spoke to me. Alice just stood there looking at me and crying. She just said, "I'm sorry," in a low voice. "Is that all? I'm sorry?" I asked her. She roared louder than me, slammed the door to the room, and cried. I didn't know what was going on. It turns out that my parents were standing behind me. They looked very depressed. Mom was crying too, and then she and Dad took me to the kitchen. My father said they had a serious conversation for me. I was prepared to hear that I was not their own child, that they had taken me for a fool, and now they were sorry and I had to leave. "Your sister has cancer," my mother said. She wept even louder. Dad put his arm around her, but he didn't look up from the floor. At that moment, I felt sick. I was prepared for anything but this news. Suddenly, I felt hurt, ashamed, and angry at the same time. "She was diagnosed with the disease a couple months before you were born, and your dad and I threw all our energy into her treatment. Alice was looking forward to your birth. When you were in my tummy, she read you her favorite stories every day. In the countries we went to, she received chemotherapy, after which she was very ill for a while. She sometimes couldn't even walk on her own, so she often kept the door to her room closed or maliciously kicked you out. She just forbade us to tell you about it because she wanted you not to be sad," my mother said. Then she pointed out that she was very sorry for me because when they saved one child, they did not notice how they destroyed another, me. I don't think I felt any worse. You can't imagine how bad I felt at that moment. I thought of such terrible things. I hated Alice, and I did everything I could to offend her. I just looked at my parents and cried. My sister came up behind me and gave me a big hug. I couldn't say a word. She calmed me down and said it was all her own fault. "I still love you, you stupid boy," she said, and laughed. That night, for the first time in my life, I had such a long, open, honest, and frank conversation. All I asked was that you let me take care of her. Now, in all her chemo sessions, I was there for her, feeding her, reading her books, playing the guitar, singing songs. A few more years passed. Alice still has to undergo intensive treatment, but I'm happier than ever because I can be near my sister, whom I love more than anyone in the world.